everyone, and welcome back to People Jew Wanna Know podcast. I have two absolutely wonderful guests for you today from the OG Jewish podcast, Schmuckboys, hosted by Libby, Shayo, and Marla Friedson. I say it's the OG Jewish podcast because Schmuckboys was one of the first Jewish pods to really pick up and become popular in the world of Jewish social media and entertainment. Schmuckboys was started in December 2021 by three Jewish women in their 20s living in New York City. They created it when they realized that they hadn't seen a dating podcast that could represent the kind of problems they deal with when dating exclusively in the Jewish world. The podcast first began as an opportunity for the hosts to shoot the shit about dating and swap dating disasters involving, you guessed it, Schmuckboys, but now it's evolved to Libby and Marla introducing the listener to cool, interesting Jewish professionals every other Thursday. Schmuckboys is distributed by the Jewish Journal Podcast Network, and some notable guests include actor Jonah Platt, activist Lizzie Savetsky, Smash Mouth guitarist Sean Hurwitz, and matchmaker Eliza Ben Shalom. In this episode, we discuss the origin of their podcast, the current dating landscape, especially from a Jewish young professionals in New York scene, and more. I'll mention that this episode is also a pod exchange. So Libby and Marla came on my podcast, but I also did an episode for their podcast, which will be released December 19th, so tomorrow. In their episode, you will get to hear all sorts of dating stories and quote-unquote rules from me, so make sure to tune in if you're curious how I'm doing out in these dating streets. I share some crazy shit. Dating in general is a tough topic to talk about because you don't really know how much of the problem is you versus factors outside of your control. Like it could be your luck, or maybe you genuinely haven't met someone who is the right fit. But as someone who studied behavioral science, which deals with understanding people's behaviors and motivations, which included a lot of research in dating, I would like to claim that I'm pretty level-headed in my understanding of the dating landscape, and I try to be as fair as possible about things. You guys can call me out on it if you think I'm not. I'm actually very curious about your opinions. One of my friends sent me a viral video the other day from Professor Scott Galloway where he gives a statistic that really frustrated me. The statistic was, if you ask women if they would date a man who fits 80% of their dating criteria, 2/3 of the women would say no. But if you ask men if they would date a woman who fits 80% of their dating criteria, 2/3 of men would say yes. And hearing that statistic without the context of why women would answer that way honestly felt like a dig at women. Professor Galloway proceeds to explain that this difference is a result of media and dating app environments resulting in what he says, massive expectations from women. But I'd like to offer my 2 cents on this, quite honestly. I think women's expectations for men have raised because women bring a lot more to the table than they may have 50 years ago or even a generation ago. If I'm a woman who can't work, who can't make my own money, who needs a man to provide for me, I will be delighted to have a man who can do those things and be 80% of what I need. But if I'm a successful, self-made woman who can already offer all of those things, I will want a man to, at a minimum, bring that to the table and then some. Women have raised their expectations not for no reason. They've raised their expectations because their progress in society now entitles them to more. And I mean this in the most respectful way. And Professor Galloway also says that most women want someone who is at least 6 feet tall and makes at least $100,000 a year. When you find those men in the US population, that's only 6% of all men. The height thing, I will say, is completely uncontrollable, so I do think women should be flexible about that. But the income thing is interesting because $100,000 is not unattainable for women these days, meaning that that's what they expect, and they still want to view the man as a provider. So women's positioning in society has evolved, but men's not so much. So I'd like to make the case that maybe it's time for men to evolve and think strategically. What is it that they're going to bring to the table in this generation of a new age woman if women still want to view men as a provider, but women now have more to bring to the table? I do want to call out that these things are just my musings, like they're anecdotal, they're not true for everyone, it doesn't apply in all cases, etc. All the fine print is there on what I'm saying, but I just wanted to give you this stream of consciousness that I had as I was thinking about myself and dating in the current field, if you will. Also, not gonna lie, I feel like the stat from Professor Galloway really triggered me because I don't like framing the dating pool as like women have high expectations and taking a dig at women. At most, women can really only be 50% of the problem. So framing it as, well, women have high expectations now is not really accounting for the other side of the coin, which is, well, what about men? Anyway, doing this episode reminded me just how much I love a good vent sesh about dating. And ladies, I see you, I feel you. It's tough out there. And honestly, guys too. I have so many guy friends who have so much to offer, and they'll show me their dating disasters, and it's like very valid. It's really tough out there. And I've really enjoyed studying dating at Penn when I was there and thinking about it from a behavioral science lens. With all that said, I'm excited to introduce you to Libby and Marla, so please enjoy. Libby, Marla, hello, and welcome to People Do You Want to Know podcast. How are you doing?
We're doing good. Glad to be here.
Doing great. Yes. Thank you for having us.
So excited to have you as the OG Jewish podcast talking about Schmuckboys. How many years has it been now that you've been doing this?
I think 3, right?
Yeah.
We started 2021. Yeah.
Okay. Listen, that's a long time to be talking about Schmuckboys. I'm excited to chat with you. The first question, as is for every guest, tell us about yourselves. What do you do and how did you get there?
So I'm Libby, now Libby Shayo, previously Libby Walker. We don't know her anymore, just got married. And I'm a native New Yorker, no permit, no license, no problem, don't know how to drive, it's all good. And my whole life I wanted to be an actress, and flash forward, went to a BFA acting program at University at Buffalo, graduated in the pandemic of 2020, unforeseen circumstances. And I end up having a accidental TikTok career inspired by my Jewish mother during COVID, and also meeting my husband, who is, well, my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, and just becoming this Jewish mom persona, Cheryl Cohen, through that working in different ways on social media and Jewish comedy, and of course, Schmuckboys, and we'll talk more about that. But that's the very brief Spark Notes, Libby Walker to Shayo. Marla, take it away.
Can I just say that was the first time I think I heard Libby say my husband, and it's amazing. Yeah, I'm Marla. I'm originally from the East Coast. I grew up in Connecticut, went to school in Massachusetts, then moved to New York City after college, lived there for about 3.5 years. Loved it there, had so much fun, started to get involved in Jewish organizations in like the last 6 months or so, then decided I'm craving change and I work in TV and film. Let's try Los Angeles. So I've been in LA for just over 2 years now, and I'm working in TV and film full-time, also working for a Jewish nonprofit part-time, also on the board of another Jewish organization. Libby and I have the podcast, which is really fun. I love LA. I've gotten super involved in the Jewish community out here, and there's just like always things going on, always things to do. And yeah, I just like to be busy, do things. This podcast is really, as you know, Libby said, we'll get into it more, but it's a really fun thing for us to have and to grow. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Bi-coastal.
Yeah.
This is a dynamic duo, and I definitely empathize as someone who has a career and then has this itch for like doing something in entertainment or in podcasting. It resonates with me a lot to hear you talk about that, because that's very much how I feel. Now, tell me about the origin story of Schmuckboys. How did it come about? And now, 3 years later, how has it evolved?
So it was a very interesting time in 2020, because I think we all thought our lives were going one way and they went another. Super dramatic, but that's just literally what it was. I thought I was going to be an actress or working in casting. Marla was in the producing atmosphere. And then there was Maxine, who was another one of our co-hosts. Maxine and I had gone to camp together. Marla and Maxine had gone to college together. I coincidentally end up in this Jewish world sphere. I go to Jewish dating events. I'm hosting events. I'm bringing people in. Maxine just got single for the first time in a while. She comes to an event. Marla's connected with Me Jew, which was a Jewish organization that I was connected with. We meet, boom, immediate connect. Maxine and Marla, boom, immediate, oh my gosh, we're friends from college. We have this group chat called Top Secret Jews. They're single. I'm just dating for the first time in a real relationship. Everything we're talking about is just bars. It's just automatic bars, electric, and Marla, take it from there.
Yeah, so we're literally texting a group chat about boys, about breakups. And at the time, Libby had a podcast already called Jewish Mom Approved. I previously had a radio show when I was in high school. So we both had experience and kind of in that hosting type world. And we're just texting in this chat about boys. And like at the time, you know, I feel like podcasts were really just starting to get like, they were already big, but you would, in that past year, really started to see individuals take on like their own passion projects for podcasts. And yeah, we're just texting about boys and we're like, guys, should we make a Jewish dating podcast? And we're like, yeah. And they're like, what would we call it? Like, we're like brainstorming the names. And then Libby says, Schmuckboys. And we're like, genius. Yes. Like,
I was listening to Dixie D'Amelio's like, you're just the F-boy. And I was like, yo, this slaps. What if we just did something different? And we were like, nobody has a Jewish dating podcast for like the modern Jewish dating world. Like, nobody is talking to those people. Maxine went to a Jewish school. Marla did BBYO, and I went to a Jewish camp. So we were all Jewish and passionate in very different ways.
Yeah. And I think we just had this realization of like, you know, dating podcasts are fun and they're entertaining. And there's a few that we already had listened to and we liked to listen to a lot. There were certain things that they were never going to talk about on those podcasts that we could talk about, that we could relate to. Yeah. We just were like, okay, let's do this. And we were all in New York City at the time. It was 2021. So like it was still kind of COVID times, but things were definitely getting better. Vaccines were out. Things were starting to open again in the city. So it was like started to be more acceptable to go out, do things, events, things like that here and there. We just got together. We created like our first episode outline. We just recorded and just started putting episodes out there. And it also worked out because between the three of us, we had different Jewish circles, different Jewish connections. So like we had different ways to reach out to different types of Jewish creators, whether they were influencers or comedians. And that was another great thing is kind of all of us being Jewish, but having different circles to reach out to. And Libby said we all had different Jewish upbringings. So we had different things that we could talk about and relate to.
I just have to say this because I say this every single time we record our podcast. If I could work with one person for the rest of my life, it's Marla. Like, it just made so much sense. It was so sad that Maxine had to move on with her career and everything, and we miss her so much on the podcast, and I would be saying the same thing about her. But right now, like where we're at with the podcast now, having done it just the two of us, I would say probably for a little bit over a year, like a year and a half, Marla's just the best. We're like the yin to the yang between like the connections and what works for us. Marla's taught me so many different things about editing, and the network that we both have is so different. It's never been like, whoa, who do we have on next? What do we write about? What do we ask? Everything was just always smooth and made sense. And I could talk about Marla forever. Like, it was really like a podcast dream because, you know, sometimes being with a friend or working with a friend, it doesn't always work out. And for us, I think it was like this beautiful thing that brought us closer together because we were starting to become friends through the podcast.
As far as how our podcast has evolved, I would say it's still at its core what we want it to be, and that we talk about Jewish dating. We try to bring on people that can give us different perspectives, whether it's like religious or not religious, married Jewish people, married converts, whatever it is. We always include dating in our episodes, but I think it's also evolved just because of what's been going on in the world. Seasons 1 and 2 are very just like, we interview the guests, we talk about dating, it's all fun. We always talked about anti-Semitism a little bit in each of our episodes. And then season 3, we were coming out with it, you know, right after October 7th. So that kind of changed the course of what we were going to talk about. Most of that season ended up being a lot geared towards anti-Semitism, Israel, things like that. So I think that in one way the podcast has evolved just because we're able to get bigger guests. And it's evolved just because what's going on in the world around us and the importance of, which I'm sure you understand too, is like bringing Jewish voices into the pop culture space and just talking about things that we feel like maybe people aren't talking about that they should be. And then Libby, if you want to talk a little bit about like the Jewish Journal and how that evolved, which is really cool.
Yeah, I love what you said. Like now more than ever, like uplifting the Jewish voices. One of the biggest things we talked about when we started the podcast was you're told your whole entire life, if you're within the Jewish community and you care to some level, some degree, you have to marry Jewish. And for a lot of people, it's like, what does that mean? Why? Why am I being told I have to do this? And you kind of have to find the answer within yourself. Sometimes that's trial and error for some people. And for us, we're like, what if we could be the people that are showing the younger generation why it is cool and what dating Jewish means by bringing on the best of the best to talk about their Jewish dating experiences. And now more than ever, with the state of the world, yes, we need more of us, and we need more people to care and to bring those voices in. And I think how we transitioned season 3 with Jewish Journal, this big sponsorship, really big opportunity for us, for the podcast to grow. The only thing that was on our mind was everything that was going on. We weren't like, how do we structure the season? What types of people? We're like, we need to deliver different points of view about everything that's going on right now. We're not filtering any of our conversations. It's not going to be the same type of episodes. And that was just what you had to do. You have to shift, you have to adapt. And I think that was the whole mission from the beginning. I think if there's one season that I'm like the proudest of, it's like how we dealt with everything that was going on and the types of conversations we were having.
I think you bring up a really important point. I recently did an episode, it was for the October 7th anniversary, where I interviewed 4 different survivors, and each one survived a different type of attack. One was a Nova Music Festival survivor. Another woman had to send her husband to Gaza the day after the war started. And then I interviewed a farmer and a kibbutz Be'eri survivor. And my mom listened to the episode a few weeks ago, so it's been well past October 7th. And she was like, hey, I listened to your episodes. It was very hard to hear. How did you process that? Because you had to interview them, and there's probably a lot of things that you didn't even include. And I realized what an impact those episodes had on me, because I was dissociated for the next 2 weeks. I was trying to figure out because I couldn't believe what I heard. Right. I know I heard it, but I had a hard time registering it, but there was no choice. You can't not. And so when you talk about, we were a dating, sex and relationships podcast that pivoted our whole season to talk about anti-Semitism and Judaism and heavy topics. Yeah, that was important. And I think that's what the Jewish audience needed to hear and deserved. So I only have admiration and pride that you did that. I think it's very important. And the other thing that stuck out to me, Libby, that you said is, why is it important to marry Jewish? And you bring it up at an interesting time when 1 in 4 Jewish people choose to marry out. And by marry out, I mean marry someone not of the Jewish faith. And we even see it promoted on shows like Nobody Wants This, which was an incredibly well-received show that already has a season 2 in the works. And it's interesting, as a single woman in New York, Marla, I feel like you can kind of understand this even in LA. Here's what I'm seeing out in the field. Okay, ladies, here's what I'm seeing. So first of all, at any given Jewish event, it feels like for every single Jewish man, there are 5 to 7 Jewish women who are smart, beautiful, funny. And so this results in 2 things, I think. The first is, 1, because there's so many women for every man, the men don't feel like they have to take initiative, they have to approach, because the odds of a woman approaching them is so much higher than it otherwise would be. Mm-hmm. So they stand there and they evaluate you, and they feel like these kings at these Jewish events. Mm-hmm. And I don't feel a lot of interest or need to chase from their end.
Girl math, and then there's Jewish math.
Yeah. So, the second thing I see that is hard to grapple with is, because there are so many women for every man, the man who is a 5 on a scale of 1 to 10 now feels entitled to a woman who is a 7. But the 7 doesn't want the 5. She wants the 7 guy. And the 7 guy wants the 10 girl. And the 10 girl doesn't want the 7. So there's this asymmetry where Jewish women, because the market's not in their favor, kind of have 2 options. They have 1, remain single, or 2, settle for a 5 when you're a 7. Mm-hmm. And I'm using oversimplistic, generalizations, but that's really how I feel as a single woman in the market. And this is like a tale as old as time, because you also have this dynamic of a smart man does not necessarily want a smart woman or need a smart woman and a good partner, but a smart woman always wants a smart man in return. And so there's always more fish in the pond for men than there are for women on the biological clock, on the personality and character trait clock, on the Jewish events clock, whatever clock we're on, men, it always feels like have a more favorable market. And that's very hard to come to terms with.
No, I agree with basically everything you just said. Most Jewish events, I feel like, not always, but most of them usually have way more girls than guys. Or even if it is even, it's like the ages aren't even, it's like if you were to narrow down all the men versus the eligible men, it's like, okay, there's like 100 men. Okay, at least 30 of them are like way too old for me. Okay, and then another 30 are way too young for me. And then of the ones that are left, like which ones match my like religious level. And then of the ones that match my religious level, which ones actually are looking for something serious and want to be serious. And so it's hard because you go, and I'm sure you feel it in New York too, like it's like event fatigue. You get to a point where you're like, why am I going to these events? Because I either don't meet anyone, or I meet someone and they don't ask for my number. Or I meet someone, they ask for my number and they don't text me. Or I meet someone, they ask for my number, they text me, but then never actually ask me out. So it feels a bit like, what's the point of trying to like put yourself out there when it's just like not being reciprocated? And I do agree. I think a lot of times, like just by the nature of the numbers, like there always ends up being less men, more women. Because of that, they don't feel that pressure because they don't feel it from the biological clock, but they also don't feel it as if like, because they feel that they have endless options. And so if they have endless options, why should they settle when they can keep exploring to find like the best possible thing? Which on one hand, I get, like we all want to find like the best match, our best possible option, but it's just hard when it feels like they have great options in front of them, but they're like, no, I want to find even better, even better, even better. And then you're like, well,
a question for you. Two
Yeah.
questions, follow-up questions to my single girls here. Are you finding that, one, at these events, it's a lot of the same people? And two, are you finding a difference between the rager Jewish events versus like the Shabbat dinner sit-down events? And can you explain the difference?
I would say most events, we see the same people. Sometimes my friends and I will purposely, we're like, you know what, like, let's not go to this one, or let's check out this one because it's one we don't usually go to. I think in general, it's usually the same people at all those events, which is why maybe it feels a bit defeating because you're not meeting anyone new. Sometimes we do try to make a point to go to organizations that we don't normally go to in hopes that we'll meet new people that we haven't normally met. Yeah, I think, when you go to the events that are more like parties and like dancing and heavy drinking and like, rah, 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 it's definitely a different vibe than Shabbat dinners. In terms of the actual people that are at both, it can vary, but I think it also just varies in the ability to like interact with someone. Like a lot of those events that are more like party, they're more fun because you're not just standing around talking, but it's also maybe harder to build a connection with someone because the music's blasting and people are drinking and it's really crowded. How can you really talk to someone? Versus, Shabbat dinners or events that are more just like talk focused versus dance focused. You can really get to know someone more, but it's not necessarily as fun unless you find someone you want to talk to, if that makes sense.
I second that, but I think the nail in the coffin on this whole market thing, like not being in the favor of Jewish women, is that of the last 10 dates that I've gone on from Hinge, which are all Jewish men, all 10 of them told me that they don't really go to Jewish events because they don't find them fun or they don't feel like they need to go. They would rather go to the bar to watch sports with their guy friends or poker night or whatever to sports, pickleball. And here is the nail in the coffin on that. Jewish men don't feel the pressure to marry Jewish, but Jewish women do. We're not seeing a lot of the good Jewish guys at these Jewish events to begin with. The Jewish men we do see at events are probably there for the same reason the women are, because they want to find a Jewish partner.
I will say that the Jewish mom probably pressures the son more because they want a Jewish kid.
That is maybe true, but we don't know how effective it is because we don't see them out at these events.
What are you doing? Work on it. Let's go.
Yeah, where are the moms? We need a campaign from the moms stat on the importance of marrying Jewish.
Like the Jewish woman, we have a lot of things, but for the men, if they were to be with someone not Jewish, then that also would affect their future child in a different way than it would for a Jewish woman.
I feel like when I've talked to some Jewish guy friends about their parents or their mom and what they say, I've gotten sometimes that they care, like, and they say, yeah, my mom would want it, but like, I'm going to do whatever I want to do regardless. Like, I've heard that. I mean, and again, it also varies by like religious level. We've been going off of what you were saying a minute ago, Margarita. So interesting. My friends and I were saying recently, we're like, maybe we should try meeting men in the wild. Going to these events doesn't seem to be working. Maybe we need to try to go to not bar nights, like go to trivia nights. Go to pickleball, like go to things that maybe aren't necessarily Jewish events and just hope to try to find the Jewish men there because they do exist. And there's a lot of them that don't go to the events because, like you said, they find them boring or they find them maybe awkward, too forceful. And then to go back to your point about them not really wanting to marry Jewish women, I've talked about this a lot with some of my friends. And I think it's really interesting because like technically speaking, from a halachic standpoint, we as women don't have to marry Jewish. Our kids will still be Jewish. Men, technically, if you follow that rule, do have to marry Jewish. But even if both men and women, Jewish men and women, have the mentality of we want to date Jewish, we want to marry Jewish, Jewish women are way more like strict and keeping that rule than men are. Like me and my Jewish girlfriends, like we won't go out with non-Jewish guys. We won't even entertain it. We won't text them. There's no even like, a lot of times at a certain point, at a certain age, you won't even just like have fun with them anymore. We're like, we're done. We just want focus on dating serious Jewish men. A lot of my Jewish guy friends that even if they know they want to marry Jewish and they're positive about that, they will still constantly entertain either having fun with non-Jewish girls or just going out with them, even if for casual or even if they know it's not going to be serious. And I'll say to them, one, you're wasting your own time because you get to a certain point, I feel like after dating for a while, where like you can't keep doing the casual and the serious at the same time. Eventually you get to a point where you have to pick one. And so I feel like in your own head, if you keep doing the casual and the serious simultaneously, you're never going to really be serious because you're always going to have casual as an option. At the same time, it's not fair to those girls because I have a couple of non-Jewish girlfriends from back home who have gotten really hurt by Jewish guys because they started to date them a little bit. They really liked them. And the guy took too long to reveal this is never going to be serious because you're not Jewish. So I'm like, it's not fair to yourself to do it. It's also not fair to the girl because she's starting to like you. And maybe you're not being honest with her right away that it's never going to be serious.
Two things to that. Number one, if you see me at a Jewish event, there's a 75% chance that I am there to meet someone. So if you're a hot, eligible man listening to this and you spot me at a Jewish function, know that I am there to meet you and probably for no other reason. So that is the first thing. The second thing is I need to tell you the one time I wanted to consider dating non-Jews and how it backfired. The Lord said, nah, bitch, so aggressively, okay? It truly cannot be worse. So I went to a Rosh Hashanah dinner. It was hosted at this guy's house. I did not know the guy until I went to the dinner, but he's a friend of a friend, so the friend of a friend invited me. At the dinner, there were some righteous Gentiles, non-Jews, who were there to support us in our observance of the Rosh Hashanah holiday and a fun dinner. And there was one very handsome, great non-Jewish guy there who has a very Jewish sounding name, which is kind of ironic. And I was like, maybe this is a sign that I got to branch out because I'm having no luck out in these streets, okay? Hinge or whatever at these events, it's like what is a train wreck after another. Like I was at my lowest and I was like, maybe this is a sign. And so he sits by me at dinner. He hits on me the whole time. He's very forward. I'm like, this guy's into me. I'm like, okay, maybe this is it. Maybe I got to pursue this. And at the end of the night, like we're talking all in a group, whatever. He's complimenting me. And then I look at my train schedule app because I live in Hoboken. I don't have the train coming past 11 every 15 minutes like the subway or whatever. It's every 30. I'm like, shit, I got to get the last train. So I scoot out of there so fast to get my train. I just give him a hug goodbye, give all my friends a hug, get out of there. And so I text my friend and I'm like, you need to tell him he's an idiot if he doesn't get my number. Like, make sure my information is shared with him. And she's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go talk to him right now. Text me. She's like, yeah, this is in the bag, whatever. Very exciting. Next day, she texts me, abort, he's engaged. Yeah. The man was fully engaged and the guy who hosted the event was covering for him because the guy who was hosting the event knew that his friend was hitting on me and let him do it. He was totally covering for him. And that will be, ladies and gentlemen, mark my words, the first and last time Margarita will be branching out to the non-Jews.
Wow.
And it wasn't like a short-term engagement. Yeah. There's no greater sign from the universe to be like, this is the wrong path.
The worst thing ever is like to engage and then like tap out. Like why? Like why are you going that far to like, I'm sorry. That just got me so angry. I'm so mad at this guy.
It's a complete breach of trust. And his fiance was obviously not there at the dinner that night. And I felt horrible. If I had any inclination that he was dating someone, let alone engaged, I would have never talked to him.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was a disaster for the memoir. Okay. It's a cautionary tale that I will tell my children.
That's a great tale to tell the kids.
Yeah. Okay. And pivoting a little bit, in all these 3 seasons that you've done, and you have the 4th one coming out, what has been a highlight or a favorite moment that you can share?
Okay, I'm sure Libby will definitely share in this first one, and that's when the Jewish Journal decided to be our distributor. So that was really cool, giving us a little bit of more credibility to what we're doing. So that was cool. And then I think one of my favorite moments was when we had on Menachem Silverstein, who's a comedian, and he told the story about how it was maybe like a month or something after October 7th, 2023. And he lives in a cul-de-sac, 5 homes, 2 Jewish homes, 3 non-Jewish homes. His neighbor's, who's Jewish, house is broken into by a guy with a knife screaming "Free Palestine." Thankfully, like, everyone was safe, but like extremely scary, especially because like it was a husband, a pregnant wife, and they maybe also had a baby. I don't remember this was the first kid or second. And after it, they were obviously really shooken up. They, I think, found out that the perpetrator identified the home by the mezuzah. And at the time, another Jewish friend that was in the neighborhood was like talking to Menachem and was like, I think I'm going to take my mezuzah down. I'm really scared because this happened in like nearby. And the 3 other non-Jewish families, as like a group, like went to Menachem's home and the home that was attacked and was like, hey, where can we get mezuzahs? We want to put them up on our door so that like we don't want you to have to take yours down and be less. Like we want to be more with you so that they can identify you as like the only Jews, because we'll all identify our doors as like seemingly Jewish. And he then shared that story with the friend that was thinking of taking the mezuzah down, and I was like, look, I'm not pressuring you to keep yours up. I just want you to know that like our neighbors said this to us. And then that friend was like, okay, I'm not going to take my mezuzah down. And it's probably like a very successful clip for us, which, I mean, that in itself was great. But the bigger, obviously, story here is just him sharing that story was just beautiful and amazing. And we were really happy to get that message like out into the world because we thought it was really important. So that's probably one of my favorite moments from all of our seasons.
Wow. No, those 2 were some good ones to pick. Jewish Journal for sure. Menachem's story for sure. Obviously, I have to say, the engagement episode and wedding episode were really special because in a large way, the podcast has tracked the beginning of Jack and I's relationship. So that's been really special and was nice to like share with everyone. Mm-hmm. But in regards to guests, one of the things that comes to my mind was when Lizzie Savetsky came on and she was sharing how she met Ira Savetsky and their whole story, which is super cute. But the way she shared it, she was saying that he was a lot more religious than she was. And she always knew that. And she always wanted to make sure she also was figuring out her religious level for herself. So she said, I want to go to Israel for a year and come back. And he's like, are you sure? And she's like, yeah, like I want to basically invest in the relationship. This is an investment to us. And she spent I want to say a year, but I also could be wrong.
I think it was a year.
Yeah. So she spent a large portion of time in Israel knowing that their future was going to be something that would happen soon, and also just wanting to reaffirm what level she wanted to be at. And she ends up coming back and becomes more for herself and not for him. And that's a subject we talk about all the time. You can't really make someone less for you, but you should be more through yourself with someone, like inspired by them. And I just thought that was so beautiful because we've always talked about different religious levels. And even if you are in a different place, you can get there, and it can be because of someone else that it is through you. So I thought that was a really special point to bring in.
That's so true. And I even had an experience like during the pandemic, I went on a FaceTime date. My hot take on FaceTime is I think it is the most efficient first date, like vibe check process ever. And I think it should be completely a norm as opposed to like getting ready, showing up to a bar in the first 5 minutes, knowing you don't like the guy and then toughing it out the next hour. Like it should just be on FaceTime.
That was my dating app. Like if you didn't exist on a FaceTime phone, we weren't meeting.
I completely agree. Even like a phone call, literally anything, because it's 80% of the return with 20% of the effort, which is truly the best rule. And speaking of investment, right? That's the best return on your investment you could get. Yeah. Basically, I went on a FaceTime date with a guy who is Jewish. And in the FaceTime date, he is slowly carefully revealed that he's Shomer Shabbos and Shomer Kashrut. Both things I am not, and both things I don't think I ever want to be. And I was like, my guy, like, I have a photo in a swimsuit on my profile. That's actually the one you liked. Like, why are you out here dating girls who are so clearly not what you're looking for? And then just like sneaky inserting this minor detail about your lifestyle on the date.
There's also the flip side. I've had friends that have shared with me that someone has said where they're almost similar, or they could be interested, but they never asked, like, oh, I don't want to continue this. You're not religious enough for me. And it's like, how do you know where I want to be? Like, we never even talked about that. Like, just making that assumption from early on. So I've had a lot of friends upset that people are ending things because they're just assuming that they would never get there. So
it's just his profile was...
No,
like in retrospect, you could tell he was trying to hide that he was observant. He like strategically picked his photos where you can't see the kippah very well. Yeah. And so like now there's a Hinge feature where you can write your like dating intentions or whatever. And I feel like if you're Shomer Shabbos or Shomer Kashrut, you should put like SSSK so that people know. Because I felt kind of misled. This was a non-starter for me. Like, I would have never liked him if he was SSSK, right? But instead, here we are because he failed to reveal that. Anyway, for anyone listening that's familiar with the app Loop, it is a Jewish matchmaking app where your friends can set you up. You build your profile and add your friends. He recently added me on Loop. And I was like, okay. Yeah, I guess he wants to see my network to see if there's anyone I can connect him with.
The way people say network, it's having me feel like it's LinkedIn. I'm scared to join that app. Terrified.
So something that we talked about on a lot of episodes is how something that you have to just be cool with if you're going to date in the Jewish world is you and your friends and acquaintances are probably all going to date the same people. And obviously, like, within reason, like, within me and my really close girlfriends, there's a couple guys that we know that would be off limits. But for the most part, there are a lot of guys that we've all dated and gotten to know. And, like, just kind of have to be cool with that because our dating pool is small. And so I kind of respect that he was like, you know what? We're not for each other, but maybe someone else. You have to be able to tell, okay, did two people not get along because they're just not a match? Or two people didn't get along because one of them's not a good person? And, like, just figuring out. Because people, you know, like, you hope that for the most part, people will just be like open and honest about their past experiences with other people, but you never know. People like emotions get in the way. People can be petty and they make something seem better or worse than it actually was.
I actually think this is very important, especially in the Jewish world. I've had instances where I've gone on a date with someone and then later my friend matched with them or wants to go on a date or sees that we're connected somehow and they'll ask me. I always try to say, this happened. I had a good experience, but the guy's not for me. You should go and just figure it out for yourself. I always try to be fair about that because they don't have to be right for you, but that doesn't make them wrong for someone else. Is there anything you want to say to the Schmuck boys?
Just communicate more. Just be upfront. I get that all the time out here. I get told a lot, like, oh, like, you're very East Coast. You're very upfront. You're very just like tell it like it is. Like you share how you're feeling. I'm like, yeah, I do. Like if I'm interested, I'll shoot my shot. If I'm not interested, or once I figure out that I'm not interested, if I'm not sure, like, I'll just tell you. You know, it's hard at first because you don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but you hurt someone's feelings more by not being upfront with them. Don't say you don't want to date someone because you don't want to ruin the friendship. Say you don't want to date someone because you don't want to date them. I think people just need to be like Schmuck boys, just need to be like upfront and open and be nice about it. You know, you don't have to be rude, but just like be honest with how you're feeling because you do no one any good by like not, you know, by being like, gray and being like fuzzy with how you're feeling and not being cool
that's
about
important.
It.
Like you could be helping someone low key. Don't just ghost them. If they did something or said something completely crazy, maybe just let them know not to do it on the next date. I sometimes feel like that's helpful because there's so many people that might be going out with so many different types of people and maybe they think it's them and maybe it's something with them and then they can work on it and then they can find the perfect person. I feel like transparency is great and we come from a definitely different generation. So let's use that because everyone loves to be like, yeah, say what you feel online, no more ghosting. So let's see it put into action.
The rule that I follow in relationships and business, like when I was at school, is don't give someone something bad to say about you. don't feed it to them. Like by ghosting someone, you're giving somebody an opportunity to speak poorly of you that could easily have been prevented. Like,
and they could help you find your next person if you're just nice. Like they might know your actual wife.
They don't think that far ahead. Like that's requires a little more intelligence than they may possess.
Sure.
But from a pure like self-interest point of view, why give someone an excuse to shit talk you when you could just leave it at neutral? So that's where like the anti-ghosting policy comes in. This is a great opportunity to gas up my brother, who is a literal angel. So I was talking to my dad about this, about how in New York, now when you go on first dates, it's not always implied that the guy is paying, even if the guy asked you out. I know guys who expect women to offer. They will, of course, decline the offer, but they like if the woman doesn't offer, they're like, oh, she's ungrateful. I can't believe she didn't even offer. Whereas I come from a traditional Eastern European background. So to me, it's like if you ask me on a date, you're taking me out. I ain't offering on a first date. And that also tracks with what a lot of matchmakers say, a lot of Jewish matchmakers especially. Like you don't need to offer on a first date if someone asks you out. And so the other night, I was at brunch with my mom and brother, and the check comes out, and my 20-year-old brother, without hesitation, grabs the check, pulls out his wallet, and puts down his card. Because when my mom and I are with him, he's paying. And I was so freaking proud.
That's really nice.
Yeah. How cute is that?
That's adorable.
Yeah. I was like tearing up at the table. And my mom told me that one time he went out to dinner with her and her friend. And even then, he took the check and paid for the both of them.
That's really nice.
It's still my parents' credit card, but it's the thought that counts.
Oh, that's so funny. But yes, that's really sweet. And
it's giving manly. It's giving raised right. It's giving good brother, good morals.
Chivalry.
Yeah.
He's a cutie.
It's interesting you talk about that because I feel like I'll make a point almost to offer more if I feel like I don't want to see the guy again because I don't want them to feel like, oh, well, she just used me. So then I'm less likely to offer if I am into them. I'll just make a point to say like, oh, to be obvious in like thanking them for paying, but I'll almost be less likely to offer if I actually like them. But then sometimes I wonder like, do they think it's nice that I at least offer even if they're planning to say no? And then by me not offering, they're like offended. I don't know. It's a hard line.
Like you got to read it date by date.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's one fixed rule because like every date is so different, especially like drinks, coffee, dinner and drinks. Like, but one big thing I learned my lesson from in my dating time is that don't tell the person you're going out with before the first date what you're doing after the date because it could go horribly and then you've invited them to another thing after and then you can't leave. Don't do that. It's really bad because then you have to make a lot of lies and it's not fun. So don't do that and just have the date in the moment. If it goes well, then you could help facilitate an after plan like ice cream or I don't know, to each your own if you want to go over afterwards, whatever that might be. But don't share too much right before.
When I first moved to New York after college, I was like 21 or 22. And I went on a date with a French guy who just moved to New York from France, French Jewish guy. And I was like, oh, great. He's going to be chivalrous. There's not going to be any bullshit. And so I went there and I told him, I was like, I'm so sorry in advance. I'm going to need to go at 6. And it was maybe 4:30 or something. I'm just making this up for the sake of example. But I had a clear deadline. Yep. And so the time's approaching and I'm like, okay, I got to go. And he's not asking for the check. And I'm like, oh, what's going on? I can't leave him here. Like, it would be so rude of me to assume that he's going to pay.
Yeah.
And so I was like, should we get the check? And he's like, yeah. And so then the waitress comes out. She brings out the check. And he's still talking to me. And he's not pulling out his card, nothing. And I'm like, TikTok, I got to go. Yeah. And so I finally look at him. And I'm like, should we split this then? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. And he got a glass of wine and I got a coffee. So I ended up paying extra to comp his wine.
Yeah.
But mind you, it wasn't a bad date. And he texted me after as if nothing was wrong. And I came home so confused and just like annoyed that this happened. And my roommate, I had a Russian speaking roommate at the time. She was probably 32. She sat me down and she was like, listen to me, bitch. She's like, when you go on a date, you don't have a wallet. You forgot it. It doesn't exist. You never knew what it was. You don't have a wallet. You don't offer. You don't move. You don't flinch. Thank you so much. If you need to get out of there, you get out of there. You thank them. Look at me. Never again. You don't have a wallet. Understand? And I was like,
I love our.
I was cracking up.
That's funny.
That just sounded like Shelly Marla.
Yeah.
Russian Jewish woman. I'm crying.
I just wonder, in those situations, I wonder if sometimes it's not that it's a cultural thing and that they think it's okay to split, but almost they wonder, oh, like Americans, even though obviously you weren't like born here, but maybe, oh, like American girls, like they want to split the bill. You know what I mean? Like I wonder if in their mind they think they're doing the right thing, but it's hard to know. You got to get inside their head and it's not always easy.
Such a gauge.
Maybe it was reverse psychology and he psyched himself out. Anyway, I digress. I do want to ask, how can people connect with you on social media? And what can we look forward to in season 4 of Schmuckboys podcast?
Schmuckboys on Spotify and Apple Music, and on Instagram, Schmuckboys Official. SCHMUCKBOYS Official. Yeah.
And besides Apple Podcast and Spotify, I think we're also on Google. Like anywhere you can listen to a podcast, we are there. You can also email us if you want to ask a question, if you have a crazy story, you have a great guest you think that would want to come on. You can DM us on Instagram at SchmuckboysOfficial, which is that also the TikTok handle, SchmuckboysOfficial, right?
Mm-hmm.
Libby runs the TikTok. I don't touch TikTok.
Yeah. Schmuckboys Official is our TikTok. You can find me at Libby Amber Shayo. I post a lot of Jewish comedy, Jewish camp content, whatever I'm vibing with, and pro-Jewish content. And my husband from time to time when he lets me, and some kosher food. So you can find me on TikTok and Instagram.
Yeah, Libby posts a lot of good content. I will say the kosher food content is really great. And yeah, I am at MarsBars36 on Instagram. I very much in like the Jewish activism world. I also post a lot about Jewish events that are happening in Los Angeles. If you want to hear about those types of events. And what are we excited about for season 4? I think we're just, as we grow the podcast, we're able to get bigger guests and that's exciting. And we're just excited to keep growing our audience and bring on cool people and just continue with what we've been building to get people entertained and interested in Jewish dating and Jewish identity and things like that.
I feel like season 4 is our season. I'm really looking forward to Marla finding her person and talking about it through the pod and just being there along the sidelines and sharing any potential things I learned along the way with marriage. And I'm excited because I'm like doing a little bit of matchmaking with Aliza from time to time and helping her with events for any things that like she might help bring to the table for the podcast. I'm just excited to see where we go and maybe becoming more expert dating coaches in other ways. So I feel like there's a lot to come for the two of us.
And last question for you. It's one that I ask every single guest of the podcast. Who would you like to nominate for People Jew Want to Know?
Have you had on Jonah Platt?
Not yet.
He's amazing.
I feel like he would be great. I mean, because he also just started his own Jewish podcast. I mean, he's having on like Van Jones and like the highest of the the very cool people. I think people would love to hear about him. He is really passionate about Judaism. I don't mean to speak for you, Libby, if there's someone else you think of.
Yeah, I was going to say Melinda Strauss.
Melinda's great.
Have you had her on before?
No. Thank you for these nominations.
Yeah, she's incredible. She shares a lot about her Orthodox Jewish life. A lot of people go to her when it comes to education. Whenever something's happening, she's always on it. And she's just such a mentor to me, to us. She was one of our first guests that we've had on. We love her.
Thank you again. It's been such a treat to record with both of you. And if I ever have any more crazy Jewish stories, I will be calling you directly.
We should make a hotline.
Yeah.
I need one for myself. I need a private hotline.
We got you. We'll give you a speed dial.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please go ahead and rate us 5 stars. Be the first to hear our episodes by subscribing to People Jew Want to Know wherever you get your podcasts. And for exclusive content, follow us on Instagram at People Jew Want to Know.